Robert Bellah was the preeminent sociologist of religion and an Episcopalian. He was invited to hold up a mirror to us from his perspective that he did with candor that comes with respect. He said, "Beneath the surface glitter of American culture, there is a deep inner core, which is ultimately religious. The sacredness of the conscience of every single individual. There is enormous power for good in this idea. It is responsible for the best in our culture. But by the very weakness of any idea of human solidarity associated with it, is a culture dominated by the dissenting Protestant tradition. It opens the door to the worst in our culture. It easily leads to the idea that humans are nothing but self-interested maximizers, and the devil take the hindmost. It is that version that we see all around us." This was 1998. It is that version we see all around us, self-interest maximizers. I don't think we can challenge that version until we come to see that the sacredness of the individual depends ultimately on our solidarity with all being, not on the vicissitudes of our private selves. "You face in your very denomination," he said to us, "the most basic conundrum of American life. If you can solve it, you may help lead the larger society out of the wilderness into which it has wandered." He was very hopeful. I was at that General Assembly, you won't be surprised to hear that speech. I also remember the prior speech, which is not recorded anywhere. I could easily find Bella's talk. But there was a prior one by Reverend Clark Olson, at that point a Unitarian Universalist minister who had become an organizational consultant. I remember only one particular line from his talk that lives with me to this day. He said, "You cannot be a Unitarian Universalist alone." That phrase has lived with me ever since. Were you a Unitarian Universalist before you joined? Or was the act of commitment what made you one? There has always been a strong tension between individualism and shared community within Unitarian Universalism. Ella reminded us that that tension is very American, not in any way unique to us. In the US, we worship individualism more than shared community. Such has always been the case, but needless to say, we see it played out in our nation right now in the worst imaginable ways. Bella also told us we aren't as special as we think. That all religions see themselves as dissenting religions, opposing the culture in which they exist. And all Protestant religions, especially, uphold the right of the individual to choose what to believe. That's especially true in liberal Protestantism these days. Have you noticed the slogans of other Protestant faiths that they now use? Whoever you are, wherever you are, the Episcopal Church welcomes you. Respecting the dignity of every human being. where unity of purpose doesn't require uniformity of belief. Most of the churches in this town will say those things. Bella told us, by the way, that we have our values reversed. He was looking at the 7 principles. He pointed to those 7 principles where the first is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And you get to the very end before you hear respect for the interdependent web of all existence. We put the individual first and interdependence last. Emerson is to blame for this situation. He was an unintended consequence, really, of his assertion of the primacy of the individual. He wasn't rebelling against community or interdependence, of course. He was rebelling against our reliance on an external authority, a God figure or a text, such as the Bible, as the source of truth. He was saying you find truth within yourself. Unitarian theologians and ministers, by the way, at that time, found that view heretical and resisted it. They did believe, they said the Bible proves Unitarianism is the right theology. They searched for those external authorities to prove it. So what was so radical about what he said was that you decide yourself. You don't look for those external authorities. But over time, needless to say, Emerson's view prevailed and is the way we practice now. We were already receptive to Emerson's worship of the individual. Our own American Unitarian Association, founded in 1825, consisted not of congregations, but of individuals. Individuals became members. That was it. No one thought, well, maybe the congregations could gather and share information and share common values. It was the individuals. It took 40 years for the congregations to organize, and they created a separate organization that's largely lost to history. But it is really the founding organization of the Unitarian Universalist Association. It was called the National Conference of Unitarian and Other Christian Churches. That was its name, 1865. So throughout our history, that just being one example of the took 40 years, we have resisted organization. A good case can be made that that resistance is one reason we stayed so small and insignificant. We didn't have the power to create a strong and well-known brand or to seed and support new congregations at scale. We didn't have the power to take back the franchise when a congregation became dysfunctional. Let me give you one example of the latter, because you might take offense at such an imperialistic statement. We have in major cities across the country that are ripe for thriving Unitarian Universalism, existing congregations that aren't, for many reasons, most of them related to their dysfunction, unable to attract members that so desperately need our message and our healing succor. We give them the freedom, we call it congregational polity, we give them the freedom to not grow our faith. Our worship of the individual includes permitting behaviors by individual members that shouldn't be tolerated. I'm sure that never happens here. While nationally we are still highly disorganized and continue to nurture behaviors that keep us that way. In our theological expression, we are moving rapidly toward community over individualism. The best example is the new Article 2, the statement of what we commonly believe together, that was adopted at the General Assembly last year. 7 principles, which we do and continue to use. There's not any rule that says you can't use them. No, we use the chalice. Nobody ever voted that we should use the chalice. So we continue to use the 7 principles. Those, as I cited earlier, speak of the holiness of the individual. But they have been replaced in that Article 2. They've been replaced with a statement of values, with love at the center. There's nothing wrong. What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that. Love is at the center. And around that center are the values of transformation, justice, pluralism, generosity, equity, and interdependence. What's missing? The individual may be implied in all of those, one way or another, but it is not explicitly stated. Individualism, what a concept. Our ancients and most indigenous people would find it incomprehensible, the way we acted out. How much does individualism actually rule? First, you know for sure you don't control your own destiny, however much you may wish. You have choices, but they are narrowly defined by your circumstances and by luck. You are likely to believe that you have had a successful life because of your hard work and difficult choices. But reflect on how much those choices were handed to you in the first place. I certainly had a lot of luck in my own life and career so far. I created circumstances where good luck might happen. And I took advantage of good luck when it came my way. But without luck, I would have had a very different life than the one I have lived so far. Second, you are beholden to others. Again, sometimes the beholdenness is harder to admit than we would like. I recall in the first song Bob Dylan wrote during his gospel period. Not many of you may have been following him by the late 1970s, but he went through a gospel period. He wrote a song called Gotta Serve Somebody. Basically, everybody gotta serve somebody. You may be an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble. You may like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls. But you're gonna have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're gonna have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil, or it may be the Lord, but you're gonna have to serve somebody. Third, why do you come to this place? It isn't the place itself. We come here for support or comfort, and for challenge. Within that support and comfort, challenge. Each sermon delivered here, each committee meeting, everything like that, is a combination of that support and challenge. The support is to remind us of our values and is told that we aren't crazy. and challenge within those values to what we thought we believed or how we thought we should act. Challenge to that. Not of the values themselves, but of how we act them out. You may recall that the sermon topic was, "You are not alone." So you may have thought that I would be talking about loneliness. I am not, but I do want to lift up the value of solitude, which is different than loneliness. I think of Mary Sarton's words, "Loneliness is the poverty of self, solitude is the richness of self." Or the words of bell hooks, "Many of us seek community solely to escape the fear of being alone. Knowing how to be solitary is central to the art of loving. When we can be alone, we can be with others without using them as a means of escape." So what are ways that we sustain ourselves and avoid loneliness? Loneliness feels imposed by circumstances, out of your control. Community feels chosen. You have chosen to be here. Loneliness feels as if something is missing. Community feels rooted in richness. Loneliness means feeling not seen or understood, as Brian in the story. Community means you are present. Hopefully you do feel present here, feel seen here. Loneliness means feeling deserted. Community means encouragement and empathy. Loneliness means neither taking or receiving. Community means the joy of giving. Community means regular contact, shared meaning, and structured care for others. So you cannot be human, let alone a Unitarian Universalist, alone.
May the long time sun shine upon you. All love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. God